Oh, there you are. There you are. Okay, so can you recap what you emailed me about? Because this is, I think,
Of
a
course.
super critical thing for everyone here, whether you're an agency owner, do it yourself. It's a really good talking point.
All right. So basically, the high-level question is, what's the best practice for finding the right person to talk to in a bigger company? So if it's not the CEO you want to talk to, and you actually don't really know what's the best practice. And the concrete situation here is that we have a client in the IoT space, like the Industry 4.0. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's about like machines that can talk to each other. So, and they're doing consulting and implementation in this area. And they're looking mainly for the CDO, CIO position. So people who are in the like IT department of a company, but also handling projects concerning digitization of the production and manufacturing. So, and there are a couple of titles like head of smart factory, head of digitization, project manager, this and this. And we found that, well, we find a couple of leads in one company. And my question was, so far we have targeted the top dogs, like the C-level people, but it seems that either our messaging is off or maybe they're too busy to reply, and we get this type of client connected, but then it gets silent. So our follow-up messages probably suck. I don't know. And my proposal was to target also the lower level, the lower tier people, like the project managers and maybe assistants of these guys. But how to do it in a way that, if these people talk to each other, how to make the messaging so that, if they say, okay, now they're targeting us all with the same message, what would be the good way to do this?
Yeah. So I think there are a couple things going on here, and feel free everyone to chime in. But big summary is, you have a service or product you want to sell. It's a bigger company. You could potentially talk to multiple titles. The higher in the org chart, the less likely someone is to engage, but it could be a shorter buying cycle, or the decision process is faster. So less engagement, faster decision. Or you could go farther down the org chart, talk to the directors, it's lower level. The engagement is going to be higher. They don't make the decisions. So then you have to rely on them in their day-to-day activity at their job to be your internal cheerleader champion, to actually bring it in real life to the decision maker and have a strong enough pull in the company to get you the meeting with the person you want to talk to anyway. So what do you do? Right? What do you do? That's Dimitri's question. What is everybody's thoughts here?
How big is the company?
Well, this particular is roughly a couple of thousand people, like 5,000 maybe.
What's the title you're trying to get a hold of?
CDO and CIO.
From my experience in companies that size, you never get in front of those people because they are, excuse me, those are ultimately not the people that make the decisions. Those people rely on their teams beneath them to make those decisions. So they collectively make the decision and then bring it to the CEO. CEO's overall function is basically vision and making sure that the company's going this way. So I would probably start looking into some of their teams that you connect with to find out which within those groups. Like we had a project with a company that I worked with for AT&T, and if we tried to get a hold of CEO, you'd never do that. So, this was a real estate deal that we were looking at. So they have an internal real estate department because those companies all have such huge, but even within that, you can't get in front of the director of real estate. So they have groups within groups. So you probably have to figure out how to fish around to find which group is going to be ultimately the decision maker for what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I worked at General Motors for 3 years, and actually the director, the director level or even senior manager level was generally the decision maker. There was obviously purchasing and everything else that goes on, but yes, the CTO and the CTO and even their immediate reports. Well, like the CTO is I mean, they manage portfolio level strategy. They don't get involved in individual purchasing decisions, period. I mean, they might get involved at the level of, we're going to make the strategic decision to align with IBM or Microsoft or, you know, whatever, but at the individual vendor level, it's the director is the decision maker. They've got a committee, they've got a whole committee and that's involved as well in any kind of product assessment. But yeah, so I would say aim lower.
And another thing too, a company of 5,000 people, they're going to have a procurement department. So somewhere in your sales process, it's going to be another decision person. So you might want to, you know, sort of do a dual prong with whoever the decision maker you figure out, plus procurement. Sometimes procurement may have something ready to go that makes it quite easy. So it's just developing those partnerships with those people.
If I can chime in on this, this is going back a few years ago, but it was a $10 million win for me. I used to work at an agency, and we were trying to get the Disney account, and I was running into all sorts of roadblocks. Felt like the offer that we had was a pretty compelling offer, and if it just got to the right person to listen, and it needed to be a senior level person. So I went through the procurement process. I went through VP processes, what have you, and we're just getting roadblocks. So what I did was I wrote a letter, and this was a financial impact. And I wanted to get, so I said, you know what, I'm going to send this letter to Al Weiss, who was the president of Walt Disney World at the particular time. And I went and I got the latest annual report of Walt Disney, which I can see, if you look at any public annual report, it's a letter from the CEO, right? And it's kind of, hey, this is the vision, this and that, you know. So I just plucked out all the things that he said were going to be what they're going to do for the next year. I took that information, I regurgitated, I put it in my letter, and I showed him how what I am offering is going to impact their shareholders, impact their guests, which they call it, and impact relationships among. So I sent that via FedEx. I also had a cutout of me made and delivered that. And I knew when it was going to get delivered. Within 24 hours of that delivery, I got a call from the executive vice president of procurement. It's the highest level you can get in procurement. And they said that, what a brilliant idea. They wanted to hear more about the presentation, set up a meeting. I went out to Disney. I had an audience, and it landed me $10 million account. So to me, you work both sides. You work both sides. At the end of the day, I mean, you guys are business owners, and you think, what's going to impact? I either want to increase revenue or I want to decrease cost. That's the only way that you add more money to the bottom line. Or if you're a publicly traded company, you're adding shareholder value, is you're showing shareholders, hey, this is what we're doing. You're either increasing prices, right? Or you're decreasing cost, or you're innovating something. So I just thought I would share that story, attacked from both sides.
Yeah.
And folks, and that's how you do big game hunting. Hey, thanks for sharing that story, because when that CEO passes on that letter, whoever he passes that letter on, what did he do, John?
Oh, it was instantaneous. I mean, I got the call within 24 hours. There was it was a shot in the dark. I knew it was just, okay, load up my shotgun, shoot it, and hope it lands somewhere. And, but at that point, nothing else was working. But I needed the right ears and the right eyes to see and hear what I'm trying to communicate. And so, yeah, that was a $10 million deal, which was a $400,000 a year income boost to me. And so, yeah, I don't have that anymore. Al moved on and things change, but everything changes. But I would tell you, for nearly a decade, it was a fun ride.
That's awesome, John.
Yeah.
Dimitri, I think that the short summary here is, if your wheelhouse is LinkedIn, and that's the channel that you have readily available, LinkedIn, maybe email, that's the channel you have readily available for your sales and marketing process and funnel, you probably want to aim lower. If you have the resources to do something more out of the box, not as scalable, but like John was just describing, shoot for the moon, shoot for higher. But on LinkedIn specifically, I think you probably want to go a little bit lower. And when you go lower in the org chart, this is what we've learned over the years, is whoever you're working with, they have to have the systems and the processes to follow through on whatever the offer is to the lower level, to make sure it goes all the way to the top. So does that make sense? So they have to, if you're going for like the director or VP level, they're lower, they have to really be your internal champion. So how do you do that? Like, how do you get them to know, like, and trust you? What is the context? Is it a group meeting like this? Is it a one-on-one? What is it? I don't know. They have to have something. There's so many different things you could do, but they have to have that set up to go from, I really like this product, this company, enough to take it to my boss. And if your client doesn't have the resources to move the needle after the director or the VP gets it, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. And so we in the past have done a number of projects where we're targeting the CTO, CIO, and same thing here. It's like hardly any nibbles. They might be a fast decision, but hardly any nibbles. We talked to a really large international company, and they were like, you know what, let's not do CTO, let's not do CIO, let's go for the more like the engineer level, and have an engineer talk to the engineers about what it's like in the trenches. That campaign, which we're still running, has the highest conversion rates we have ever had, ever. But it took them a while to figure out how to put together internally the pieces so that they could make sure that the engineers brought the product, so there's product awareness, to their team and their boss when purchase time happens. And they have to be okay in that context with like a 6 months wait, a year wait. And big companies with expensive services, they get that. It's a 6-12 month thing sometimes, but that's been our experience. So just if you decide to switch targeting, make sure that the company you're working with has the ability to execute.
Got it.
Going from the lower person, because that's not your responsibility. The conversation's left LinkedIn. We've even tried going, connecting with the director VP, and then after they're connecting with their boss. And it just seems like we still don't get their attention. You have to rely on them doing it in person.
Yeah, that could be a roadblock, because the company I'm working with is not really, it's not a company, it's like a research institute. So they don't have a sales team. The research people are doing sales themselves. So they need to sell some volume of projects, of consulting projects. And of course they don't like it. They're all engineers, they don't like selling. So that's why I thought maybe a good idea to even sell them like sales training on top. But
Yeah.
now I see this was maybe a bit bad idea. Because it's all on my company now to do this heavy lifting.
Mm-hmm.
We don't get any support from the sales team because there is none.
Mm-hmm.
Lessons learned here.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. In the past, we've just lost a client because it's like their ROI isn't there. And then that forced us to go, all right, let's shoot lower, get more conversions, but only work with companies that have the ability, have the sales
Yeah.
team set up to be able to follow through. Otherwise,
Yeah.
this is out of your control. Like you said, it's out of your control. They don't have a sales team.
Yeah.
It's not your fault. That's where they're at. And if you don't have the ability to give them a virtual sales team, what if, Dimitri, what if you found a partnership with a company that does like a outsourced chief sales officer? There are lots, it's a whole world.
Cool. Yeah. I haven't thought about it.
But of course you would have to get a percentage, right? They would make your job easier. They make your job easier.
Yeah.
You could keep the client and they get to close more.
Sounds like there might be too many hands in that after all.
Could be. Well, it sounds like there's actually not enough hands right now.
Yeah.
I don't know. All right. That's a good thing. And it's a wrestle that everybody that owns an agency has to wrestle through. You wrestle through it if you already took the client on, not realizing it, or you wrestle through it during your sales qualification process. Right? I see some smirks from people that learned the hard way like me.